Lesson 2.1, Transformations of Quadratic Functions. Our essential question: how do you describe and write transformations of quadratic functions? So far, we took everything we learned in Chapter 1, summarized it into algebra so that it related to the a, the h, and the k of our vertex form. Now we're going to actually do some practice problems. So page 2 has 4 practice problems. We're going to do the first 2 together as a class. The other 2 I want you to do as independent practice. So reading the directions, it wants us to first describe the transformation, which means I need you to use math words. This is the problem that we're trying to do. So vertex form was f of x equals a, in parentheses, x minus h squared plus k. We need to identify what a, h, and k are so we could then use them to describe our transformation. So I see that this right here would represent my k. This right here would represent my h. And then the number that would be up here would represent my a. So I can see that my a is 1. H. Be very careful with h because h is not 4. Notice vertex form says I'm supposed to be subtracting something. This is not subtraction. So what number did we have to subtract to where when it was simplified it was a positive 4? Our h had to have been a negative 4. Because if I was subtracting a minus 4, so if I had x minus a negative 4, it had to look like this for it to be actually in vertex form. But you know that if you were subtracting a negative, this would have simplified down to x plus 4, which is the answer that we are given. So I know that I'm having to subtract a minus 4. So my h is a minus 4. Now my k. Vertex form says k is supposed to be whatever you are adding. I'm not adding anything. So the only way that you can get a minus 1 right here is if I was adding a negative 1. So this would have been adding a negative 1 to have it be in true vertex form. But you know that if you are adding a negative, that's the same thing as minusing 1. Which is why it looks like the form they gave me. This is the vertex form using the minus where you're supposed to and the add where you're supposed to. Now a is the number sitting out front. There was no number sitting out front, so a was 1. So far we have not described anything. All we've done so far is identify what the a, h, and k are from our vertex form. We need to use these to describe. So from here, we know that we could find the vertex. Our vertex is the coordinate point hk, according to our first page. So my h is a negative 4, and my k is a negative 1. So my vertex is a coordinate point negative 4 and negative 1. So let's go ahead and graph that. So negative 4 and negative 1. And a is 1. If a is 1, that means that I'm going to move the normal way I normally would. There was no vertical stretch or shrink. So that meant I went over 1, up 1, over 1, up 3, over 1, up 5. So the only describe that I have is my vertex. If I had to graph this the old way, like in Chapter 1, if I was adding 4 on the inside, what did adding 4 on the inside tell me to do? Adding 4 on the inside told me to go left 4. Back in Chapter 1, if I was minusing 1 on the outside, what did that tell me to do? That told me to go down 1. It's exactly what we just did. We went to the left 4 and down 1. Left 4, down 1. So what you learned in Chapter 1, these describing words, are the exact same thing as identifying the a, h, and k to find out what your vertex is. And so since a was 1, we have no vertical stretch or shrink. We're going to go ahead and go over 1, up 1. Over 1, up, 1, 2, 3. Over 1, up, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And don't forget, they all have partners. So over 1, up 1. Over 1, up, 1, 2, 3. Over 1, up, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So you could graph this the Chapter 1 way. Plus 4 on the inside meant left 4. Minus 1 on the outside meant down 1. I saw no vertical stretch or shrink. So you found your movements, you went left 4, down 1, and you graphed. That was Chapter 1's way. Or you can do Chapter 2's way, where we identified our h and our k to find where our vertex is going to be. I found my vertex. I saw that A was 1, which meant I had no vertical stretch or shrink, so my movement was the parent movement, and I graphed it using the parent movement. They're the same exact thing, using the same exact knowledge, just from different directions. So let's come over here and graph the second one. So our second practice problem. Let's graph this using chapter 1's knowledge. So on the inside, I have a -3. On the inside, a -3 told me to go to the right 3. I have no outside move and I have no multiply move, so that's the only thing that I have. So if my vertex is usually here, I go to the right 3, my vertex is now right there. That's using chapter 1's knowledge. Well, let's use the chapter 2 knowledge, where I'm supposed to look at this. Vertex form is A parentheses x minus h squared plus k. The A, there is no A, which meant A is the Secret Ninja 1. My H, what am I subtracting? I'm subtracting the 3, so my H is a 3. My K, what am I adding? I'm not adding anything. It doesn't exist there, which meant I was adding 0. So my vertex is supposed to be at the coordinate point HK, which meant my vertex is at the coordinate point 3, 0. And that's exactly where I put it using chapter 1's knowledge. Now A is 1, which meant I had no vertical stretch or shrink, just like in chapter 1, which meant my parent is my movement. So over 1 up 1, over 1 up 3, over 1 up 5 is the movement that I will be doing. And let's not forget about their partners this time. So here's my graph using both chapter 1 and chapter 2's knowledge to graph it. So you have 2 practice problems down below. I want you to do these 2 practice problems on your own.